the honor of introducing him to you. His Excellency Dr. Mohammed Moncef Marzouki was the first president of Tunisia after the January 14th revolution in 2011. Upon the assumption of the presidency, Dr. Marzouki embarked on a mission to open the doors of the presidential palace through campaigns of transparency, participative governance, and by encouraging a safe public space for civic organizations to flourish. During his mandate, Dr. Marzouki was a voice of social and revolutionary activism, calling for respect for civil rights, curtailment of the security apparatus, and economic opportunity. He transformed the presidency into a position of service to the Tunisian public. Occupying a middle ground between secularist and Islamist political standpoints, Dr. Marzouki created a dialogue between all political, social, and religious groups in Tunisia, clearing the ground for an inclusive, stable, and consensus-based democracy to take root. Dr. Marzouki is a doctor of medicine, a human rights activist, an author of numerous works on political philosophy in the Arab world. He was founder of the center-left Congress Party for the Republic, which was one of the parties that formed the government coalition that he led. Dr. Marzouki spent 2 decades in exile due to his family's political activism early in his life. He returned to Tunisia in 1979 as a lecturer in medicine, but was sacked in 2000 for his political activism. He then joined the Tunisian League for the Defense of Human Rights and became an advocate for human rights. In 1993, he ran for president against the former dictator, Zine El Abidine Ben Ali. He was subsequently imprisoned and put in solitary confinement. A national and international campaign and the intervention of South African President Nelson Mandela led to his release in June of 1994. In 2000, he was again sentenced to prison, and following another international outcry, Dr. Marzouki fled to France, where he continued his struggle in exile. Dr. Marzouki finally returned to Tunisia in 2011 after Ben Ali fled the country and he was elected by the Tunisian National Constituent Assembly as the first president of the newly democratic Tunisia. This is a man with a very distinguished past who has seen some of the world's the deepest and the darkest, but also the most vibrant of the American spirit. And it's a pleasure to welcome you to the University of South Carolina.
I feel flattered, but a little bit intimidated, by all what has been said. Please, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank the Houses Forum of International Affairs for this opportunity to talk about my country and what's happening in this part of the world. First of all, I was asked by the organizer of this meeting to answer very difficult questions. What lessons can be drawn from the so-called Arab Spring and from the so-called Jasmine Revolution? And this question reminds me of the answer of former Chinese Prime Minister Zhou Enlai. He was asked the same question, what do you think about French Revolution? And he said, well, it's probably too early to make a final judgment. So you can imagine that I also can respond the same way. What are just 6 years in the life of countries like Egypt or Tunisia, it's probably too early to make a final judgment about what's going on in our Arab world. But I will nevertheless dare to put forward some ideas, not conclusion, just some ideas about the whole process, drawn from my own experience as political actor and also as an intellectual, watching very carefully what's happening in this world for more than 3 decades. Well, let me start with the bad news, because unfortunately we have a lot of them. First bad news: the cost of what is called spring and jasmine and so forth. In fact, the cost is extremely high. Currently, we have about 7 million displaced people in Syria. Syria is completely destroyed as a country, and probably as a state, as a society also. In Libya, we have a civil war, extremely hard civil war with thousands of people displaced. We have had more than 2 million refugees in Tunisia coming from Libya. In Yemen, they have got now famine. They have got also thousands of people displaced. In Egypt, currently they have more than 60,000 people in jail because the situation is worse than before, than at the time of Mubarak, the former dictator. Even in Tunisia, we have had only 300 people killed, 2,000 wounded. So you see that the price people have to pay for freedom is extremely high. This is why I always, when I heard about the jasmine and the spring and so forth, said, hey, it's not the most accurate image. We better talk about volcanoes or earthquake or something like that. But not at all jasmine and not at all spring. It's bloody spring, very bloody spring. So the second bad news is this probably is just the beginning of it. I doubt that this bloody process would stop. I'm afraid that we are going to have more and more people killed in Syria, in Libya, and I don't see the end of the civil war in Libya. I don't see the end of the civil war in Syria. And it will probably take years, maybe decades. And we can expect also that other Arab countries, we will have the same fate because people took to the street in Tunisia, in Libya, in Syria because they couldn't accept anymore to suffer from corruption, from poverty, etc. And you have the same things in every country, in the other countries. I'm not going to nominate them, but you have the same problem everywhere. So I expect that the volcanoes, will burst in many other Arab countries. So we are just at the beginning of the whole process of destruction, of civil wars and unrest, etc., etc. The third bad news is that probably the problem is that the corrupt elite that led to this situation didn't get the message, except in just in one country, I think, in Morocco. The king of Morocco, got the message, and he began some political reforms. And this probably would lead to the lower the tensions in the Moroccan society. But elsewhere, nobody got the message. On the contrary, we experienced that some Gulf states, put a lot of money to block the process, to put a lot of money, to corrupt the elites in Egypt, in Tunisia, to block the whole process and to revert to the former situation. And that means that they didn't get the message. They didn't understand that they have to accelerate reforms so to avoid what happened in Tunisia, what happened in Syria, etc. But unfortunately, I do believe that they don't get the message. Same thing for the Western government. I was very surprised when I was charged the position of French government or the German government or Italian government or US government, they were very surprised by what's happened in our region. And I think they were not very happy. And this surprised me because you expect from democratic government they would be happy and they would, they would support you. And so we didn't get any support. Probably because the Western government were surprised by the fact that free elections, gave power to the Islamists. So for them, all this was happening in the Arab world was an Islamist revolution. In fact, it was not. It was a democratic revolution. But free elections, gave the power to the Islamist trend, and this is the game. You have to accept it. So, and maybe also because Western government, for them, the main problem is stability, and they think that stability, combating terrorism, etc., just is a matter of you need hard dictatorship no matter what's the cost for the local population. So here also, I think that the message has not been, they didn't get the message. And I see that for the moment, when I see the US government supporting a dictator in Egypt, worse than the former one, accepting a human massive violation in Egypt, while talking about promoting democracy, I think this is a huge problem. So now, the good news, because there are some good news. Well, the first good news is that we in Tunisia, fortunately, I'm going to explain why in Tunisia, because there are some structural reasons. We in Tunisia, we have proved that it's possible to reconcile democracy and Islam. We have proved that we can have national dialogue. We have proved that we can lead a peaceful transition. We have proved that we can also have free and fair elections. We can have a peaceful transfer of power, etc. So it means that somewhere in this world, in this complex and difficult Arab world, you can have some part where things can be good. Should we be? Well, many people, are talking about the Tunisian model. Last month, I have been in Sudan, and I saw that they are having also their national dialogue, and I have a lot of discussion with Sudanese politicians saying, hey, the government is cheated because he's doing just what you did in Tunisia, but he's discussing with only his friends and not with political opponents. So in Libya also, we always heard Libyans saying, explain how you did this national dialogue, how it worked, and what advice can you give us? So we have it. I must be modest, but I must be also frank. This Tunisian model is probably not. I always say to my Sudanese friends or Libyan friends, look, you have to invent your own model. You have to accept that you have to invent, because Tunisia is not Sudan, Tunisia is not Libya, and you have to invent. You can do it, and you must do it. So the good news is that this Tunisian model is carefully watched by everywhere in the Arab world, and people do believe that this model can bring them peace, and I hope that this will be the outcome. The third, but the most important good news, I think, from all what happened for me, is that we have discovered during this revolution our own youth. I call it internet generation, or the e-generation, or Facebook generation, or whatever. But this youth is the most connected youth in the world with internet. When you see the figures, you will be surprised, because the Arab youth is the most connected in the world, even more than here in the United States or Europe. And I do believe that this e-generation, living already in an e-democracy, will be the generation that will build up new democratic structure everywhere. And you will have this e-generation everywhere, in Saudi Arabia, in Morocco, in Algeria, everywhere. And for this generation, dictatorship is already dead, in their heart and mind. And I do believe that the future, even if it's extremely difficult, I do believe that this generation will bring us and will be able to set up what I'm fighting for more than 3 decades, and what I see that extremely difficult. I would like to end this remark, because probably we're going to have more details, more discussion later on, by saying that the process now in this Arab world is extremely difficult, bloody, complex, but we do believe that it will be, well, sometimes when I see the amount of destruction, I say to myself, probably we have to destroy this. What's destroyed currently is the state's mentality, social links, and so forth. And we have to pay the price of this destruction, because the first step, you have to destroy something, then you can build something new on its ruin. This is exactly what we are doing. So to finish, I would say that you must be interested, excuse me to tell you to speak, you must be interested in what's happening in this world, this Arab world, because I think what's going on in the Middle East and North Africa has a huge impact on what's going on everywhere, because imagine that we have more terrorism attacks and more civil wars, etc. This would impact what's happening in Europe. This would impact what's happening in the United States, and vice versa. What's happening here in the United States is extremely important for us. I must admit that I am a little bit scared about what the new administration, I don't know exactly what would be, it's politics. I'm afraid that will worsen our situation, you know, and that we maybe we will face more and more difficulties in, you know, in conducting this, this difficult transition to democracy. Anyway, we would do it. Believe it, we would do it, and we would like to rely on your friendship and your support. Thank you all.